Welcome back, everyone. Hope you're having a great day wherever and whenever you are. My name is Kasumi, and I'm going to be reading from my 13th novel, Snowseer. Hope you enjoy. We begin on 17 November 2035 in Kabul, Afghanistan. She felt it before she saw it, what would become the characteristic tremor in her right hand that neither time nor experience would dull. Her fingers contracting involuntarily with a rhythmically electric tick as if set to a metronome, Shar looked past her classmates, past the art projects on dirty newsprint, through the cracked window to her left that looked out on what was left of the playground. It took her a moment to focus, but as soon as Shar saw it, she couldn't look away. Its form clarifying before her eyes into the outline of a child, its arms spread as it trotted through the gravel without the telltale crunch of or footprints in the snow, flakes collecting on its arms and shoulders. Stellar clusters of snow whirled around its wraith-like form as it worked its way towards the rusted slide perforated by bullet holes and shrapnel. The ethereal child turned and waved at Shar before it flinched, as though some unseen villain was assaulting it. It reeled and put its hands up defensively, staggering from slap after slap. Its cherubic face gathered snowflakes with phantom tears as the child recoiled in terror and screamed a silent banshee howl that made Shar clap her hands over her ears, only to wish she had two more hands to shield her eyes from the flash. Shar? Shar, can you hear me? It was her mother Farzana's voice, but it sounded distant, ringing, like her mother was shouting through one of the bombed-out parking garages Shar had taken to playing in, her words echoing across cement pillars and distorting such that Shar knew it was her, but couldn't make out the words. Bright, buzzing electric lights flooded Shar's eyes, and it took her a few seconds to sort out her surroundings. Green canvas tent undulating irregularly in the wind. Doctor standing over her, loose green scrubs, gloves that wrinkled with a sound Shar found oddly relaxing, white face mask with "I'm here to help" in Arabic and 7 other languages printed on it, green plastic cap restraining a head of curled black hair, thick blue acrylic glasses with lights attached to the sides, warm gray eyes behind the lenses. Her mother across the bed from the doctor, tears forming creeks across her cheeks and dripping from the point of her chin, her silvering hair completely exposed in public for the first time Shar had ever seen. Sharjila, can you hear us? The doctor asked. Shar nodded. Can you tell us how you feel? I hurt, was all Shar could manage as a sharp wave of pain stabbed into her left arm. She pointed with her right hand, and the effort jabbed her ribs with more pain as she moved her right arm across her chest. I'm sure you do, and I'm sorry. We're low on pain medicine, the doctor said as they continued their examination with a small flashlight and stethoscope. I'll get you something for the pain as soon as I can. Can you be brave for us and hang on a little longer? Shar nodded small nods as she reached for her left arm, the doctor and her mother stopping her before she could reach it. Shar, your arm is hurt. You can't touch it yet. It itches. I know, but if you scratch it, you will make it worse, Farzana said as she stroked Shar's right hand. Her dressing needs changing. I'll see what I can do about the itching, the doctor said as they clicked their flashlight off. You're very strong, you know that? I'll be back as soon as I can to check on you. The doctor's mask shifted as they smiled beneath it, then they nodded to Farzana as they hurried off. As soon as they left, the moans and cries of the other wounded crept into Shar's ears, and she shut her eyes against the sensory nightmare. They begged, pleaded for help, for pain medicine, for someone to end their suffering. All Shar could hear in reply was apologies. You are so strong, Farzana said. Do you know how strong you are? Shar shook her head. 4 abyss departed in the city today. The abyss that hurt you departed in the middle of your school. It destroyed the whole building and every other building for 3 blocks. Do you know how many people survived that blast? Shar opened her eyes and silently asked how many by looking at her mother. Just you. A tent flapped open nearby, and craning her head upwards made the world upside down, but gave Shar a view of the blonde woman in a black trench coat as she entered with 2 other people who also wore black trench coats. Shar watched as their coats swished back and forth with each step, the motion exaggerated by the wind that followed them into the tent. Apart from some of the doctors that Shar identified as foreign from their skin tone, accents, and flags stitched onto their coats, These were the only foreigners Shar had seen in a while. She looked towards the closest doctor, then back at the woman in the black trench coat. There was no identification badge on any of the coats, no patch with a flag on it, no stethoscope hanging from the woman's neck. Shar's breath caught sharply in her throat, and she pulled the blanket covering her chest a bit higher when the woman's coat moved just so, allowing Shar a look at the gun holstered at her hip. "Who are you?" the doctor as they pushed their way past the black trench coats. "You're not authorized to be here. Please leave." The woman produced a badge from her coat. The doctor examined it, their brows scrunching in distrust. "My patient needs treatment." "We only need a minute," the woman said as she pocketed her badge. "1 minute," the doctor said as they reluctantly stepped aside. They looked Shar in the eyes and nodded, then began tracking the time on their wristwatch as the trio of black coats moved to stand above Shar's bed. "We're with the Bureau of Restoration," the woman said. "We understand you've been most fortunate, Sharjila." "I have heard of you," Farzana said as she stood and placed herself between the bed and the woman. "I know what you think you are here to do, but you're mistaken. You are not taking my child." Shar made to protest, but her mother silenced her with a wave of her hand. "Your child survived a nova. That makes her unique. The Bureau of Restoration needs such unique individuals. Sharjila will be well cared for, and you will be handsomely compensated." 30 seconds, the doctor said. "No compensation is adequate for my child." "Mrs. Saeed, we believe your child surviving this latest incident puts her in a position to be able to help millions of people. Look around. Look at the state the world's in. We need people who can help more than any other time in human history. Sharjila has the potential to be a light in our darkest hour." "No," Farzana's voice was low, slow, final. "We've been given authority by the governments of the world to force your compliance, Mrs. Saeed. We would prefer Sharjila come with us willingly, but for the good of humanity, we will deal with unwilling if we must." The woman drew her coat open and clasped her hands behind her back, exposing her armament and making a silent threat. Farzana regarded the weapon, then looked up at the woman's face. "My daughter's entire life has been lived under the threat of violence. The Soviets, the Taliban, the Americans, the corporations, all have tried to take from us that which is most precious, and all have failed. Your bureau is no different." "Time's up," the doctor said as they moved to stand beside Farzana. "This is my hospital, and my patient requires my attention. You will please leave immediately." 1 million American dollars. Rent-free and fully furnished housing for yourself and any remaining family in Bastion 27, a living stipend, regularly scheduled visitation, and automatic job placement should you desire it. Sharjila will receive the best care, the best education, the best training. She'll also receive housing, clothing, and a stipend for meals and expenses. Sharjila can help save the world, Mrs. Saeed. In return, the world will take care of Sharjila. Think about it. The woman produced a glossy black business card from her jacket and handed it to Farzana, then turned to leave. "Wait," Farzana said as the black trenchcoats were about to depart. Farzana looked at the card in her hands and weighed possibilities. It wasn't really a business card. It was a ticket to a better life. A life free of militants and militias, free of the threat of an uneducated life, free of being potentially forced to marry a man of the ruling party, free of any of the nightmares that Farzana had herself lived through. It may be selfish to want a better life for herself, she figured, but it wasn't selfish to want what better for her last living child. She looked at Shar, still curling the blanket up to her eyes, her hands shaking from pain and fear. She saw the woman Shar might become if she stayed, saw the woman Shar might become if she left, and decided. "Shar, these people can help you. They'll take care of you, right?" Farzana asked as she looked up at the woman. "We'll have her on a transport to Ramat Gan and in one of the best hospitals in the world in 2 hours." "Don't worry," Farzana turned back to Shar, taking her quivering hands in her own. Shar's hands were frigid, and her right hand ticked rhythmically despite Farzana holding it close to her heart. "Everything is going to be okay, if you want it to be. I know this might be difficult right now, but you need to make a choice. Nobody can make it but you. Do you understand?" "I understand." "If you go with these people, they'll take good care of you. You'll get better quicker, you'll get a good education, and you won't have to go without anything. But if you go with them, they'll need you to help people. I want to help people. Shar, this is different from helping Mrs. Hassan with her groceries. The kind of help you would need to give is very dangerous. You could be hurt, or worse. I understand. I'm sure you do, but I need you to think carefully about this, Shar. Going with these people means not seeing me for a while. It may be a long time. Will it help you if I go? Don't think about helping me, Farzana shook her head and tightened her slipping fingers around Shar's. This time, you need to think about yourself. You said it was selfish to think about myself. It's selfish if you only think about yourself. Farzana kissed Shar's hand as it ticked to some unheard rhythm. There are times when you have to think about what's best for you before you can think about what's best for others. You can't help others if you can't help yourself. Like, remember that time we went on the airplane to visit your cousins in Istanbul? Shar nodded. Do you remember the video that talked about safety before we took off? It said if there was an emergency, I needed to put my mask on before yours. Remember? Why do you think they say to do that? Because if you can't breathe and you try to help me and can't, we're both in trouble. If you can breathe, you can help me without worrying. Exactly. And that's just what we're talking about here. You need to breathe yourself before you can help others breathe. What would I have to do? Shar asked as she turned towards the woman in black. We would need you to talk to the ghosts that are causing problems. Talk to them and help them go away peacefully. What if I can't make them go away? Don't worry about that now. You'll have years of training and schooling before you even try to talk to a ghost. You'll be ready then. What if I'm not ready? What if I'm never ready? We won't know that for a long time yet. But I have faith, just as your mother does. What do you think? Farzana asked. The choice is yours. I know it will be dangerous, but I want to help lots of people. I'll go. Farzana nodded, then pulled Shar close and cried silent tears. She was proud of Shar and her selflessness, but she reserved a bit of selfishness for herself in wanting Shar to refuse. After losing her husband to cancer and her son to a riot, Farzana wanted to keep Shar close, to never let the child out of her sight. Part of her wanted to hang on, to grab at the woman's gun and take Shar away. But there was nowhere to go. Their apartment had been in the blast radius, and there was nothing left of it but rubble and memories. All of Farzana's extended family were either dead or part of the exodus in the early 2020s. There was nowhere to go, and no one to go to. She consoled herself with the idea of visitation, of providing what wisdom and love she could a few days at a time. It was far from ideal, but the benefits, the greatest benefit being Shar's service to humanity. By the time Farzana nodded and let go, 2 of the black trenchcoats had left, and the third was discussing something with the doctor. The doctor nodded reluctantly and waved over an orderly who helped them disconnect Shar's IV and monitors. An icy wind brewed a miniature cyclone of snow that wisped along the road the aid tent had been set up on, its form battered by passing vehicles and boots, its passing leaving newly fallen snow to take one last journey before coming to rest on the ground. Shar sat up a little to get a handle on what was going on. There were several adult voices surrounding her in at least 3 languages. The cold stung her cheeks a little, but it was a feeling she'd been growing increasingly used to, as temperatures in Kabul had dropped over recent months. Beyond her mother, the doctor, and the woman in black, a dark gray aircraft waited, its engines tilted skyward and its rotors slowly spinning to life as its side door opened and a medic stepped out to help the doctor and the orderly lift Shar's gurney into the aircraft. The wind died down to a low howl as the aircraft doors closed, then was drowned out altogether as the engines accelerated and the stuttering chopping of the rotors grew louder and louder. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom in what Shar recognized as English. Her phone and its translator app were gone, destroyed in the explosion, so Farzana translated for her. The pilot says it's a clear flight to Israel. We'll have you in a nice, warm hospital room before you know it. Can I sleep while we fly? Shar asked. Of course, Farzana smiled as she stroked Shar's obsidian hair. I'll wake you when we get there. Shar nodded and closed her eyes. The gurney was neither comfortable nor uncomfortable, but she found the engine and rotor noise oddly soothing despite its volume, and it wasn't long before sleep found her. She dreamed of the ghost she'd seen in the playground, her mind filling in the details on the ghost's face, along its outline, and what might have been its clothing, traced in snow and barely visible to Shar's eyes as it moved. She dreamed that the ghost looked at her, and waved in the moment before the unseen antagonist assaulted it, gathering alabaster flakes, giving it the barest hint of a smile. It was just a little taller than Shar, she figured, and wondered if it had a name. Did it have a name then? Had it possessed a name in life? Would they have gotten along? Would they have been friends? The ghost turned and reeled under the attack as engine noise flooded Shar's dreamscape, and the ghost faced Shar with desperation in its barely perceptible eyes. Shar reached out and tried to touch it, but the ghost was always just a little too far away. That's all for now. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you again soon for part 3.